1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi everyone, this is Jewish Talk coming to you from Nassau Community College on 90.3 WHPC, also streaming on the iHeart and the iTunes app, and I'm telling you, wherever you give a turn, you're going to find WHPC. We're also later archived on Spreaker.com, and for those who miss us in the morning, you can hear us again at night, 11 p.m. Oh my goodness, who's up at 11 p.m.? But hi there, my name is Rabbi Perl. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This all depends on when you're listening, whichever time it is, or you can even be watching it right now. We can be seen on the Facebook at WHPC and on my name, Untitled Pearl. And so hello radio, hello online, and hello to the world. Today, we are going to share some of the lingering, let's call it, thoughts on the past Yom Kippur, which was this past week. And then we're going to pivot to the holiday of Sukkot, which begins this evening. This is, of course, Sunday evening, going into 2 days of the holiday of Sukkot. Beautiful, beautiful, everybody. Thank you. And I tell you, you're going to soon see why I would choose to actually talk about Yom Kippur, because there's a story that it's so moving that I wanted to share that with you this morning. You may have heard the story, but it really has such a great impact on me and everybody who... I shared this at our synagogue on the Ne'ilah. That's the concluding prayers on the evening of the holiday of Yom Kippur. This is the story. It's about a Canadian couple, Edith and Sebastian, who have been blessed with 4 children. Their daughter, Maya, was just 3 years old when Edith and Sebastian first noticed that she was having vision problems. And by the way, when I get my comments, I see comments on both Facebooks. I'm more than happy to recognize you. And of course, it doesn't, in no way does that mean undermine anyway the importance of listening on the radio at WHPC. But Facebook gives me an opportunity to actually, as they say, face with someone. So with that in mind, I want to say hello to Linda Zellickson and to Eitan Kelshevsky, who made a cameo appearance right at our synagogue this Yom Kippur. It was a great honor to see. And also I want to say hello to Lynn Feldman. Wow, Lynn Feldman from Huntington. I don't realize we reached out all the way to Huntington. Don't tell anybody. It's bad for the FCC to know what's going on over here. But we go all the way out to Huntington. And Chag Sameach to everybody out there. And particularly I want to say hello to Lily and to Boaz and to Geffen and to the entire Mishpacha. So here we go. Listen carefully, dear friends. It really, really brought me to tears, this story. Now, basically, we're talking about Edith and Sebastian, and they have 4 children. And then they realize that one of their children is having some vision problems. So they took her to a specialist. And the tests were taken, but remained inconclusive. A few years later, they later got a phone call that Maya, the eldest of their 4 children, was now diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa, which is a rare condition that causes a loss or decline in vision over time. The couple, who had been married for 12 years, had noticed that 2 of their sons, Colin and Laurent, were experiencing the same symptoms. The fears were confirmed when, a few years later, the boys were diagnosed with the same genetic disorder. A shattering, terrifying decree hung over this young family's head. There's no cure or treatment to slow down the progression of this retinitis pigmentosa. They possessed the terrible knowledge that 3 of their innocent children would be blind in a matter of years. So how does a parent come to terms with this? How to tell it to the children? How could this couple help their children build the skills that they need to navigate their way through life? How does one wake up in the next morning and the next? How do you prepare for a future of darkness? So, listen carefully, my friends. Listen to what Edith and Sebastian's resolution. What did they do? In the previous years left I should say the precious years, left with their children's eyesight, these parents, Edith and Sebastian, decided to fill their children with amazing visual memories, to fill their minds and memories with incredible experiences of the world. Their mother declared, "I'm not going to show an elephant in a book. I'm going to take her to see a real elephant." So in March of this year, the family left Montreal without an itinerary. All they created was a bucket list of experiences for their travel. They are now in the midst of an incredible world tour for them to see, touch, and smell as many parts of the planet they can. They began their trip in Namibia, where they hung out with elephants, zebras, and giraffes, before heading to Zambia and on to Tanzania, and then they're flying to Turkey, where they spent a month. The family then made their way to Mongolia, before moving on to Indonesia. They're trying to suck the marrow out of each day of life. Diverse cultures, history, fauna, flora, incredible animals in Africa and in Turkey, hiking, biking, and swimming. In a few short months, these parents attempted to cram and fill every nook and crevice of their children's visual memory with the awe-inspiring and overwhelming beauty and diversity of God's creation. I looked at a picture of these beautiful kids, it's available online, who look so happy, bright, and animated, swimming in a Turkey river, and I cried. It is heartbreaking. Their eyes are so bright and curious. I want to take this moment, dear friends, to send out a blessing and a prayer for these children and their beautiful families and their beautiful parents. May God be with them, and may Hashem allow the scientists to find a cure for this disease speedily. Why do I share this with you? Our hearts go out for them, but these courageous and amazing parents can teach us all a lesson, with our own children, our grandchildren, and with ourselves as well. We know that our children are growing up facing harsh, confusing realities. They might find themselves in environments in which, as the psalmist says, people have eyes, but they do not see, ears, but they do not hear, where the truth is eclipsed. And I think anybody listening and watching today does not understand what I'm talking about. It's the most confusing world, and the adults are actually confusing the children. We're not leaders anymore. We're just confusing them with relativism and all kinds of other totally inappropriate ways of looking at the world. We must fill our children's brains and souls with endless spiritual and moral richness so they can confront the dark situations. Just want to share with you the importance of those visual and memories that we give to our children and grandchildren, to our communities. This happened during it's a well-known story in the Second World War. As you may know, countless Jewish parents gave their precious children to Christian neighbors and orphanages in the hope that they would provide safe haven for them. This, of course, is back in Europe. The parents expected that they or their relatives would take these children back if they survived the war, but most of them never made it out alive. So I take you to May of 1945. The well-known Rabbi Eliezer Silver from the United States and Diane Grunfeld from England were sent as chaplains to assist some of the liberated Jews of the time. While there, they were told that many Jewish children had been placed in monasteries in Alsace-Lorraine. The rabbis went there to reclaim them. When they approached the priest in the charge, they asked that the Jewish children be released into the rabbi's care. "I'm sorry," the priest responded, "but there's no way of knowing which children here came from Jewish families. You must have documentation if you wish me to do what you ask." Of course, the kind of documentation that the priest wanted was unobtainable at the end of the war. The rabbis asked to see the list of the names of the children who were in the monastery. As the rabbis read the list, they pointed to those that belonged to Jewish children. "I'm sorry," the priest insisted, "but the names that you pointed to can be either Jewish or Gentile. Miller is a German name, Markovich is a Russian name, and Swirsky is a Polish name. You can't prove that these are Jewish children. If you can't prove which children are Jewish, and do it quickly, you'll have to leave. One of the rabbis had a brilliant idea. We'd like to come back this evening when you're putting your children to sleep. The priest agreed. That evening, the rabbis came to the dormitory, where row upon row of little beds were arranged. The children, many of them who had been in the monastery since the war started in 1939, were going to sleep. What did the rabbis do? They walked through the aisles of the beds, calling out, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, which translates, Hear, Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. And guess what? One by one, the children burst into tears and shrieked, Mami, Maman, Mama, Mamushka, each in their own native tongues. You see, the Shema Prayer that the parents imbued into the souls of these children, nobody could take away and erase from their memory. Of course, Baruch Hashem, the children will return to our people. Memories. What memories are we giving our children? I understand Dr. Seuss is very important, but I'm asking you seriously, what is it all about? I want to say good morning to Richard Rottenberg, and you never have to come, apologize. Richard said he came on late because he was putting on his tefillin. Thank you so much. And good morning as well to Lori Polanski, McCrossin. Thank you so much. Chag Sameach to everybody listening and watching. So, let's be open. This is something very serious. Our youth today are going to deal with lots of confusion. We live in a society awash in moral relativism. The question of identity is more confusing than ever. The question of purpose burns with even greater intensity. The more partisan and divisive and jaded the world is out there, let me tell you, the more our children will thirst for cohesion and meaning. We cannot protect our children from blindness that encroaches, but we can take a page out of the Canadian couple's book. We can take our children on a world tour and fill them with visual memories. What am I talking about? We can take them to the book of Bereshit and read with them about Abraham and Sarah. Read to them how they sacrificed their own comfort and security to travel across a unknown world to teach and to uplift those with confusion. We can take our children and grandchildren not to another ball game, gesundte, hey, go whatever you want, but also take them to the book of Exodus and show them Moses, who stood up as up against the most powerful ruler of the world and declared that no man can enslave another, because we're all God's children, every human being, and we are called to serve him in a perfect world. Guess what? Instead of simply going to another Club Med event, why not take them to the Holy Land, to synagogues, to the Western Wall? Why not take them to Rashi's France, the Rambam, Maimonides? How many years do we have at our disposal? We all have the time Hashem has given us. Why don't we use this time in this new year to imprint upon our children and grandchildren not shtuyot, but spiritual values that they will be able to navigate their lives with? And do not be content to read them from a book. Let's learn from Edith. Do not just show them a picture of an elephant. Take them to see the elephant itself. Don't just read them about how God rested on the seventh day. Create Shabbat in your home. Don't just learn about the Kiddush. Recite the Kiddush. You'll feel a little bit hypocritical one Friday night, stopping everything, but you know what? You'll get used to it. Put the yarmulke on, and with a clear voice, and with the wine dripping over your fingers, that will bring an amazing, eternal, vision to the children and grandchildren. So, dear friends, let's all fill our children's minds with visceral Yiddishkeit. But the message is true for each of us as well, not just our families, our own self. What are we filling our visions with? Truth is, our souls see everything, know everything. Our soul is divine and experiences the truth of all reality. The whole purpose of Yom Kippur that we celebrated last week was to come front row and center with our divine. That divine energy that flows and vibrates in every atom and cell and neuron of our personality. But we enter a world, what happened when we were first born? We enter into a world where clarity elusive. We've got to go on a search. That's what life's all about. We've got to go on a search. There are moments when even amidst the darkness, even with blindness, the heavens open up and we get a glimpse of the shining truth of what life is all about. Do you know when that moment happened? That happened at Ne'ilah, at that prayer in the Synagogue of Yom Kippur. What happens in that day? Why is it everybody makes an effort to come back and not find excuses to be at home? Because at that moment, the heavenly gates are thrown open during those precious moments. We have the rare opportunity to reach back to our prenatal certainty. That's what happens in Ne'ilah. To see things that we have seen in the heaven. To reconnect with that light that shone above our heads when we were in our mother's womb. To learn the Torah from the angel. That's what we were doing. The most, you could say, the most original, prehistoric, so to speak, visions that we all have is in our mother's womb when we all studied the entire Torah. That brings security. That brings secure to our knowledge that there is a God who directs every moment of our lives, who grants us with the ability to change, and Hashem who listens to our prayers. So during these final moments, we go through gates, look around. This is the importance of what Yom Kippur was all about. Yom Kippur itself, especially when we join together, if we're able to get to a synagogue, or even if we're doing it at home, but especially when you're in community, it gives us, look around, we capture images once again. I emphasized on Yom Kippur that the most important, I would say, to me, the most uplifting aspect of Yom Kippur is the intensity of us being together as a community. Right? Most of us, perhaps not together with that many of community throughout the year. So when we come together, that's an amazing experience, an amazing vision that rests in our minds. Bottle up that inspiration and certainty, and we take it back to all the days of the coming year. The year is long and much lies ahead for each of us, but God has sanctified us and filled us with light and sustenance, and He's appointed us, as I often say to the ad nauseum of my community, we are not bags of bones just hanging out in a zip code for as long as we live. That's not what we're here for, to hang out and to sit in couches. Each one of us have been appointed as an ambassador. To be alive is to be a representative of holiness and goodness in this world. And I mean this to every single one of us. Here, in this most sacred of times and places, this is the whole purpose of the high holiday season, is that we have moments, sacred times, in a sacred place, and we're given the opportunity to see the high holidays, which began with Rosh Hashanah and with Yom Kippur, and now we're going to a whole week, a week of Sukkot, gives us the opportunity to see, to look at the world properly. It's amazing. I've yet to see anyone going to a theater or a game and leave halfway and miss the ending. So too, I encourage everybody, make a resolution this year to come and celebrate with the community in your community, wherever you live, with your synagogue and temple. Celebrate Sukkot. Sukkot that starts tonight, Sunday, and all the way through the end of Simchat Torah is the flip side, the second side. The first 10 days of this month, of the Jewish month of Tishrei, is the column of contemplation and seriousness. But then we turn to the concluding 7, 8, 9 days of great joy. That sustains us throughout the year. And that is why the high holidays offers us the ability to capture images deep within ourselves. The images that we have on Netflix and all the other talk shows, etc., are all superficial stuff. They don't keep us going. They just keep us more device and arguing with each other. It's the high holidays, these special experiences that have a deep impact in ourselves as we go out into the year, marching with a victorious song. Because what is our victory? What do you think that drives us, each and every one of us, that each of us are now prepared to share the light and the beauty that we've seen on the high holidays, and to share it in a real way, not this superficial stuff, but to share it with our children, with our families, and with the entire world. Some years ago, an English Jew by the name of Beryl Gardner shared one of the most remarkable stories ever told on BBC radio. When Beryl was 12, before the World War II, he was one of the children who left Germany through the Kindersport that King George allowed. Beryl arrived in England and was taken to an orphanage. He spent most of his days crying, but asking his caregivers when he would see his parents again. As hard as they tried to make him happy, he could not be consoled. One day, Beryl's caregivers found out that King George VI, who ruled in Britain from 1936 till his death in 1952, when he was succeeded by his daughter, the late Queen Elizabeth II, he found out that this king would be passing through their village, as he frequently did during the earlier years of his reign. When they told Beryl that they would be seeing the king pass by that day, it was the first time in weeks that he stopped crying. Beryl had a secret plan. Beryl and other Jewish children were taken to the town square and stood behind a barricade as they waited for the king to pass by. As the royal carriage came closer, Beryl jumped the barricade and ran with all of his might towards the king's carriage. As soon as the royal guard saw him, they grabbed him and carried him back to the barricade. The king asked his guards what was going on. They told him that the boy had ran towards his carriage. So he invited Beryl to come closer. The king asked Beryl, "Why did you run towards the carriage? Is there something you would like to tell me?" Beryl broke down crying and told the king how much he missed his parents, who were still back in Germany. He then wiped the tears and said, "Please bring my parents here." King George responded, "Young boy, we're at war with Germany. It would be impossible for me to do that." "But you're the King of England," Beryl cried. "You can do anything. Please bring my parents to me." The king looked at the boy with compassion and said, "Please don't cry. I promise I will do what I can to make it happen." Beryl gave the king his parents' names and addresses in Germany and thanked him, unsure, of course, of what to expect. A month later, there was a knock at the door of the orphanage. Beryl's parents had arrived. Somehow the king got them out of Germany, and they were reunited with their son. This is the power we have at these moments. This is the power that we had on Ne'ilah, and this power of Ne'ilah continues through these important days and into the holiday of Sukkot. The holiness of the conclusion of Yom Kippur hasn't left us, but continues to be with us. What we learn from this young man is, let us not be afraid to jump the barricades. Sometimes we have voices in our heads and actions in our past that tell us, we must stay back. This is not for me. My children and grandchildren will start to laugh at me if I start putting a yarmulke on, at odd times. Many people think, I'm destined for a life of anxiety, paralyzed by trauma, held back by wounds, stuck in my chains. You can't have an intimacy with the king. You can't be free. We've got to remain alive. We're going to remain the rest of our lives in the dark. But you know what? What is the high holidays all about, dear friends? It reminds us the King of all kings is right here and is all ready to embrace us and listen to us as we too jump the barricades and speak to him face to face. On the high holidays, we did it in the synagogue, and we come face to face again with a loving hug inside of a sukkah. The sukkah represents a hug of each and every one of us. And at that time, at the sukkah, just as we had on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, we come to the real authenticity of who we are, not all the junk and all the stuff that we dress ourselves up with, imagining that we're somebody else. Hold nothing back during this time, during this week. Tell the King everything and ask for everything that we want. It's never too late. And surely, may all of our prayers be fulfilled. It may be a year of true redemption. Let me say hello to Jean Brandenstein. Thank you so much. And Lori Sachak, thank you so much. These are all the wonderful people watching on my Facebook at Untitled Pearl, and also those who are watching on WHPC as well. And we look forward to seeing your comments, and we appreciate everyone who's joining us. It is very, very important to look at life differently, and as I said, what we can learn from these two couples, those parents who are trying to give everything they can in a real way to their children, who at this time sadly may face a life of darkness, of blindness, giving them as much visual as possible. We too, thank God, if you have your vision, well, why don't we give our children and grandchildren and the people that we know and we love, give them visions of ourselves that are really, truly inspiring examples. So here we are tonight, on this Sunday, begins the holiday of Sukkot. The word Sukkah, if you see it on the calendar or in a store or wherever online, the word Sukkah, S-U-K-K-A-H. Be careful, it's not Sukkah, it's Sukkah. Best translates as shelter or cover, and refers to the space where we spend much of the time as possible during this coming whole week of Sukkot. Why do we leave our homes and spend time in this shelter or cover, outdoor space? Because the Torah tells us that we are to dwell in such sukkahs, such environment, to remind ourselves of how when the Jewish people left Egypt, they, as we all know, traveled through the wilderness, and there was no Motel 6, not even a Hilton. Of course, people stayed in these tent-likes. So it is a reminder of the shelter that we received from Hashem during the 40-year trek through the Sinai desert. Now, the cover itself, the cover of this sukkah, is made out of organic material. The holiday is celebrated in the fall, when our Gregarian ancestors would bring in the final products from their wine presses and threshing floors. Accordingly, the sukkah is covered with things that grow and were subsequently harvested from the ground, such as discarded grapevines and wheat stalks. Nowadays, this covering is known as schach, and it's often made of evergreen boughs, corn stalks, palm fronds, bamboo, or specially made mats for this event itself. Now, by definition, the sukkah is a structure that provides shade. So there must be enough schach, enough covering on top, so that there's more shade than sun. Conversely, if you use very broad boards tightly packed together, your sukkah will no longer be a temporary shelter, and it'll just feel like an ordinary home. So if you have the opportunity to visit one, you'll see how you can see through the sky, and yet you have more darkness than light. Now, how many walls constitute a kosher sukkah? There must be at least 3-ish walls. What do I mean? The ideal sukkah, of course, has 4 walls, with a door, of course, unless you plan to go through the wall, through the ceiling, which I do not recommend. But however, it is still valid even if there are only 2 full walls and a 3rd wall that's just a handbreadth wide. I want to say hello to Jean Marie. Chag Sameach. She's wishing us all a wonderful holiday, and to everybody. Now, what about the height? How high does the sukkah have to be? The sukkah must not be shorter than 10 handbreadths, nor may it be taller than 20 cubits, which is higher than 30 feet. So I know Dr. Kilshevsky, his sukkah is approximately 29 feet tall, high. So thank you so much. He's a very tall guy, so he needs a very tall sukkah. But what's wrong with the tall sukkah? Why is there a limitation? Up to 30 feet. because if the sukkah is so tall, you may actually be sitting in the shade of the walls, not in the schach, which is far, far away. So the actual shade has to come from the roof, so to speak, of the schach, not from the walls. Now, a sukkah needs to be at least 7 handbreadths by 7 handbreadths, which is big enough to fit most of a person's body and a tiny table. I don't think anybody does that unless they do it in Rockville Center. They're known for the very small sukkahs. Conversely, there is no maximum square footage for a sukkah. So go ahead and make one big enough to fit your family and your friends and everybody. After all, there should be at least a theoretical spot for every one of us in the sukkah, because the whole purpose of the sukkah, as I explained, relates to community, relates to unity. And why make a small sukkah when you make a bigger one and have more friends come by? So on the first night, actually on the 2 nights of the diaspora, on the holiday of Passover, it's a mitzvah to eat matzah. That's why we have 2 seders in America. In Israel, it's only 1. So too tonight, on the first night of Sukkot, it's a mitzvah to break bread in the sukkah. Even if the weather is lousy, and thank God on Long Island, at least now it's a beautiful day. If it's the way, I remember when I was a child and it was raining the first night of Sukkot back in London, my father waited till it stopped. It was pretty late at night, because it's so important, at least for the first night, to make the kiddush and break the challah inside of a sukkah. Included in this holiday, and you'll see this certainly in the New York metropolitan area and areas of Long Island, where you will see people walking around with a lulav and esrog. There are 4 types of vegetation taken every day on the holiday of Sukkot, and these are called the Daled Minim, the 4 kinds. Each day of Sukkot, except for Shabbos, we take the Arba Minim, also known as the 4 kinds. And of course, the Sukkot is a 7-day holiday, starting this evening, concluding on the 21st day. And what are these 4 kinds? A palm branch, it's called a lulav, 2 willows, an aravot, a minimum of 3 myrtles, hadassim, and 1 citron, also known as an etrog. The first 3 kinds are neatly bound together. So we bind together the lulav, the aravos, and the hadassim. And then when we make the blessing, we bring together the etrog with the other three kinds. Be very careful if you're going out there to buy one. Treat the set with TLC, because they're very, very fragile. Best place for doing this mitzvah is in the sukkah, this outdoor holiday booth. Nevertheless, not only do we take it and make a blessing over it, we also have the custom to wave it at the end, these 4 kinds, these 4 arba minim, in 6 directions: south, north, east, up, down, and west. Reminding us as we begin the new year, God is in all directions, and to protect us from anything evil, from any direction. What's the central theme of this Jewish holiday of Sukkot? The idea of the 4 kinds, these 4 arba minim, they represent 4 kinds of personalities with different levels of knowledge, Torah knowledge, and observance. By bringing them together, it represents our unity despite any external differences. So in the spirit of unity, we invite everyone to share your own arba minim, or make an effort to go to a synagogue or to a neighbor to participate in this particular mitzvah. The truth is, as I've been emphasizing today from the holidays of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, it's an entire, all the holidays are not disconnected. They're all, in a sense, what begins on the first 10 days, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, becomes revealed in the second half. The holidays celebrated in this month are very comprehensive, very significant, and very, very important for us. So in this context, the Medrash explains that the mitzvah of taking this lulav and esrog really symbolizes the intrinsic unity of all of us. The fulfillment of this mitzvah requires us to hold together, as I mentioned, the fruit and the branches coming from 4 different species of trees, the date palm, the myrtle, the willow, and the citron, and they're all brought together. You look at these 4 kinds. they're so different from each other. The esrog has a pleasant taste and a pleasant fragrance. The fruit of the tree from which the lulav is taken, the date, has a pleasant taste, but no fragrance. The myrtle has a pleasant fragrance, but no taste. And the willow has fragrance, neither fragrance nor pleasant taste. And in Hebrew, in Israel, they say, is on a tam and on a reach. So I want to say hello to Jonathan Wolf. Welcome back. And to John Riggs. Thank you so much from North Carolina. Hi, John. Thank you so much for joining us. So what's the significance of these four kinds with the taste? Yes, no taste. Taste symbolizes study, Torah study, because understanding the Torah gives us a concrete pleasure, similar to the sensation of experiencing a pleasing flavor. Smell symbolizes the fulfillment of mitzvahs, because the quality which usually motivates us to fulfill a mitzvah is this unquestionable acceptance of the yoke of heaven. Since we do not understand the reasons for all mitzvahs, their observance may be less gratifying than Torah study. Like people like to be academic, but they're not too much into the mitzvah. So is much the same way that smelling something is less palatable and gratifying than tasting it. An extension of this symbolism enables us to see each of these four species as representing different kinds of people. The esrog represents a person who studies and fulfills mitzvah, has smell and taste. The lulav represents one who studies, he's got taste, but there's not too much into performing that many mitzvahs. The myrtle, that does have the smell, represents someone who does observe the mitzvahs, but doesn't spend too much time studying. And then you have the willow, that represents a personality who no smell and no taste, doesn't do any studying, and doesn't observe too many mitzvahs or any mitzvahs. Yet, the mitzvah of the holiday of Sukkot, with the mitzvah of sitting in the sukkah, we take the lulav and the esrog and demonstrate that no individual can be really fulfilled and complete if he's not willing to go beyond himself and join together with his fellow man. See, even the esrog, that species that symbolizes someone with plenty of learning and plenty of observance, you can't take the esrog by itself. It has to be together with the other three kinds. It has to be taken in hand and held together, even with that humble willow. By the same token, no matter how much we've developed ourselves as individuals, we cannot reach our true potential without the help of others. We all need each other. So the unity is an indispensable ingredient in the growth and the progress of all individuals. Now, the concept of unity, which is so prevalent in the holiday of Sukkot, think about this. Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur focuses on ourselves as individuals, as we pray and look forward to be blessed for a good year. And then we do it as a group. We all go into the sukkah. We all take the lulav and the esrog in our hands, because unity is so important, is reflected not only in the requirement of taking all these four species together, but also the characteristics of the individual components of these mitzvah. So our sages stipulate that the lulav may be used for the mitzvah only if its leaves are bound together. See, if you look at each of these four different kinds, you'll see each of the four itself is made up of a unity concept, because the lulav has many leaves, but they're bound, have to be tight together. Not like when you go to Florida and you see the spread out palm branches. Has to be bound together. Unity. The only species of myrtle that can be used is that which has successive rows of 3 leaves each. If you look at it very carefully, you'll see out of the stem comes 3 individual leaves as it goes down the stalk, and you'll see they come out exactly on the same line. Again, unity. In each row, the 3 leaves must be level with each other, with no leaf significantly higher or lower than another. The species of willow also express the concept of unity, because they all grow in bunches. So the motive of unity is also reflected in the esrog. Indeed, because the esrog represents a category of personality with potentials for achieving much greater than anybody else, and its emphasis on unity must be greater. If a person has smell and taste, then they all have a greater responsibility to share that with others. How do we see this? The esrog expresses the concept of unity by virtue of the fact that it grows on the tree, one of the very few fruits in this world where that same fruit is on the tree growing through the entire calendar year, and is exposed to all the seasonal variations and changes of the climate. Not only does the esrog withstand all these influences, but it responds positively to them. Each of these influences contributes to its growth. So we have a lot to learn from each of these four kinds. We must learn from the esrog and not merely tolerate. What do we learn from the esrog? Don't merely tolerate people of all kinds. We must do that, including those with characters and personalities that are very different from our own. A true great person understands differences. Those who go around on demanding everybody has to be the same has lost it. But actually, we grow through the contact with divergent perspectives of people. It's important to learn from others. You don't have to always agree with everybody else, but be open-minded to understanding what other people have to bring. This is why we take the four kinds. Each of them are great. One may have one over the other or less than the other, but we've got to bring them all together. We begin the year by saying hello to Dennis Walsh. Unbelievable. Dennis Walsh, are you up so early? I guess because of the wonderful show that's going on in Mineola, blocking up the streets. I can't even get to my own synagogue. Just joking. But the bottom line is, what do we learn? Who is wise? Ezeo Chacham. Who is considered a wise person? One who learns from every man. I think they should hang this up now in all the places of government, from Washington all the way down locally, because who is a wise person who has a chance to listen from others as well? So, you see, these expressions of unity on Sukkot are related to the motif of unity in the holidays that directly preceded Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Please, this is my pet, insight to these high holidays, that the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur they're only now preparing. They are preparations for this second half of the month. Tonight begins the 15th day. It's a full moon. Take a look tonight. You'll see it's a full moon. That means during this first 14 days, the moon is starting to develop. So the development, the completion of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur develops on the 15th with the celebration, the observance of the week of Sukkot. So there is, however, a difference between the approach to the unity of Sukkot and the days of awe. Certainly there's levels of unity. We all come to the synagogue and Rosh Hashanah, and we all do the same things on Yom Kippur. But during the days of awe, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, our awareness of unity stems from a unique spiritual experience of those days, during which we all step beyond our individual selves and we establish a contact fundamentally with our souls our godly souls inside of us. So that's a level of soul where there's no separation between man and God. No differences exist between one man and another. So in Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, we pray together as a collective unity. Despite the intensity of this early experience, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur has a drawback. Why? Because the feelings of unity we experience in the days of awe stem from a level of our soul far above our ordinary everyday thought process. We go to a synagogue, we lengthy prayers, boring speeches, unbelievable, jokes. But seriously, it's we step away from our weekdays. The question is, will the unity and the holiness that we felt in Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur last with us into the days ahead? So we may feel after Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, we go running back to our own homes and we disappear. In my shul, we have a custom at the end of the Yizkor service. We wish everybody a Zisem Pesach in case I don't see them till next year. So we rush back to our ordinary experience, which may, in a sense, bring us back to that feeling of separation. I did my thing on these days of awe and Fatik. What does Sukkot do? What do we do when we go to celebrate Sukkot? We linger on. we take that wonderful unity that we felt on the high holidays and now bring it into eating and drinking and celebration and Ashrei, the importance that Steve Epstein teaches me every time, Ashrei, to be happy with what we have, teaches that we must remain unified even at the level where a person's individual identity is taken into consideration. We look at everybody, not just one congregation, everybody sitting in the same room in the synagogue, but we go back into our lives where one looks like an esrog, one looks like a willow, and we bring them all together. Although the differences may exist with regard to our potentials and the degree to which we've developed them, nevertheless, we still stand together. So in a sense, you could say the crash course or the training of bringing the holiness of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur into our lives, the test is the celebration of Sukkot, where we leave a synagogue, we leave even our homes, and we stand in this rickety sukkah with this, organic roof, the schach, and we all are there together. So the sequence of the holidays are absolutely vital. We have this all-pervasive experience of the days of awe and the essential awareness of unity that actually prepares us for the unity that Sukkot brings. So the intense spirituality of the days of awe jolts us out of our self-consciousness, enables us to reorient our lives, and then we can relate to each of our fellow mankind in the proper manner. So you see, it's not just going to the synagogue and praying for ourselves, but the real deal is leaving the synagogue and being inspired with that visions that we had, like that parent who are doing everything they can to bring the best visions. We leave the high holidays with a vision of unity, of blessing, but not just for ourselves, but to share it, to celebrate together. With that in mind, I want to remind everyone at our Chabad of Mineola, everyone is welcome to join us on Thursday, October the 13th at 5:30 for about 2 hours. We're having a barbecue celebration, Hakil barbecue celebration at our synagogue, and with wonderful food and live music. Really, it's accessible for a person who may be hard to get there. No steps are required. And it's a wonderful time to come together and celebrate good food, some nice kosher music, and of course bringing ourselves together where we can relate to each other in a very joyous manner. So, and then that, it's not over. What they say, it's not over till it's over. This progression of deep unity reaches its peak on Simchat Torah, when everybody dances, everybody comes to the synagogue. Doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, whatever zip code. All of us from different backgrounds join together in exuberant dancing with the Torah scrolls. We put aside our personal differences. We don't get carried away with what we know, what we do, and we don't do. And while other things, sadly, we find good excuses to divide ourselves, all that stuff fades away, and the intensity of the unity that began on Rosh Hashanah reaches its height on Simchat Torah, with the dancing in a circle. A circle has no beginning and no end, and every point is equidistant from the center. We forget about who is head and who is tail. It is a common nucleus that unites us all and fuses us into a collective identity. Fantastic. So while Sukkot teaches us that even as individuals, we stand together as a united people, Simchat Torah takes us even further. At this time, we lose all consciousness of our own individual identities, and we step completely beyond ourselves. The experience of Simchat Torah is not, however, a return to the levels of Day of Awe, during which we transcend our individuality through a spiritual service. So that's right, we recognize the unity through spiritual and prayer, linking us above the level of ordinary experience. We can all agree that our days in the synagogue, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, brings us higher than ourselves. But Simchat Torah is the absolute bonding and togetherness in a more revealed, ordinary, material way in the midst of eating and drinking and dancing. So these are the joyous bonds of unity that are so prevalent and so part of our life as we go through it during these high holidays. Who would not want to, enjoy and participate? And therefore, again, I invite everyone to join us this Thursday at 5:30 at Chabad of Mineola. So, again, I hope this brings us to a deeper appreciation of why the Jewish holidays, people are joking, you can't make an appointment, you can't make any arrangements, because it's either Rosh Hashanah, and then it's the Shabbos, and then there's Yom Kippur, and then again we had a Shabbos, and then we go again into 2 days of the holiday, and then the intermediate days. We really, for a month, we just don't, in a sense, we're pulled away from our weekday activities. But guess what? All of us know the importance of investment, and people go crazy when their 401k starts to look a little fachaded, right? We all want to invest in the future. Well, dear friends, spending some time celebrating the holidays is the best investment that we can make as we begin the new year. Interestingly, the Chabad Rebbes would always point out that the first days of the new year are the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. 2 days. Each day is 24. 24 and 24 is a total of 48. 48 in Hebrew equals the word mayach, brains. A person wants to use all their brains properly for the whole year, to impact the year. So the first 2 days of awe and reflection are serious ones. And the last 2 days of this high holiday season is, of course, Shemini Atzeret and Simchat Torah. Again, 2 days associated with joy. So we start out with 48 hours of reflection and awe and deep contemplation of what life is all about. And then we bring it out into the real world in the form of 48 hours that includes dancing, hakafas. We again bring in Yiska services in the synagogues. My friends, there's a rhyme and reason for every part of the holidays in all that we are discussing today. And with this in mind, I also want to emphasize that the uniqueness of this year. This year in the Jewish calendar has a name. It's called the Year of Hakil. Hakil is very, very, very important of this oneness that exists in this coming year, because in biblical times the calendar was in units of 7, and every 7th year was called a Shemitah year. Shemitah is the year of sabbatical, and following that, on the second day of the holiday of Sukkot, that's the beginning of the new cycle of 7, was considered the 8th year. Following that, what do? There was a Mitzvah of Hakil. Hakil means to gather together, and an amazing event took place in the temple courtyard in the year following the sabbatical year. Why do I share this with you? Because we spent so long time, with the corona pandemic, and it was for us to be together in the synagogue and to celebrate during this coming week is a big deal for all of us. All of us must appreciate that. And interesting, how do we come back from this isolation? That's this unity. As I said, the Jewish calendar is divided up into units of 7 years. From when the Jewish people settled the Holy Land, they began counting the years in units of 7. And on the 7th year, of all the farmers did not work the land or do business with the produce. They spent time in meditation and prayer and study and with family. There was a retreat from the ordinary work schedule. It was downtime, so to speak. And what happened after this year of withdrawal and isolation? The Torah gives us a fascinating mitzvah. In the beginning of the 8th year, during the holiday of Sukkot, everyone alive, men, women, and children, would all converge on Jerusalem in the Holy Temple. And at that point, the king would ascend on a platform and read sections of the Torah to all of us. And it was a replay, it was an experience of being like at Mount Sinai again. So each 7 into the 8th year, there was a historic event of unity. And that mitzvah was called Hakel, which means to assemble. Literally, like an event like no other. Literally, every one of us, men, women, children, even babies, would come together for this celebration. This year, dear friends, that we've just ushered in the new year, Rosh Hashanah. This year on the calendar, on the Jewish calendar, is 5783. So 22 into 23, this is the year of Hakil on our calendar. And it comes by interesting, right after the corona. We've been isolated. How much better now, as we slowly come together, to welcome in this year of Hakil, where we all are empowered to gather, to unite with each other, to reconnect on so many levels in an uplifting and an all-embracing way. And that is why it's so important to celebrate and to use this year to make gatherings. Time doesn't allow us, but there's so much to learn and to make every effort. This is what we learned this year. Gather your friends, gather your family, come together, make excuses to create assemblies of people and share words of Torah, share meaningful insights, and to be inspired with that unity that this year. So plan for this year. I look forward to creating many, with Hashem's help, Hakil gatherings in different formats, so all of us can come together in a meaningful way and to learn from each other. Listen to that. I know this sounds terrible, not politically correct, but we hope to learn from each other. Just like the lulav and the esrog, each person brings their strengths. We can all learn from each other and not find ways to be divisive and separate each other, but to find ways to learn, to uplift each other, and to celebrate each other in the most meaningful and uplifting ways. So, dear friends, it is an honor to be able to be with you every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m., for us to be able to share these words. We look forward to the new season after the holidays as well. We'll be having more interviews, but I ask everyone, please become a Hakil person, this ambassador of love and unity, and help bring people together in this coming year. This is your host, Rabbi Perl, wishing you a Chag Sameach.